Ignorance leads to fear. Fear leads to hatred. And hatred leads to violence. This is the equation. Ibn Rushd. Welcome back, y'all, to another episode of Crim's Class Podcast, episode 4. It's been a while. Thank y'all for tuning in again. Check this out. Before we even get to it, I want to make sure we understand what we're going to be focusing on in this class session. So, by the end of this podcast class, listeners will gain a deeper understanding of the ways in which the broader socio-political climate is impacting the rise in hate crimes, particularly in schools, and how most hate crimes go unreported. Additionally, listeners will learn actionable steps to gain justice and fight for justice internally and externally through the example of Mr. and Mrs. Sims' story. And with that said, y'all notice that I said Mr. and Mrs. Sims. We have our first guest on the podcast. Shout out to Mr. and Mrs. Sims, Nicole Sims, Dale Sims. Thank y'all for being here today. So what I like to do before we get into teaching, because that's what y'all going to be doing today, I got to check in with you all to kind of see where we are, and the same thing for the listeners and the viewers. On a scale from 1 to 10, it takes some time to think about this. I'm putting y'all on the spot. How are you all feeling in this moment on a scale from 1 to 10?
For me, just considering everything that's going on, probably like about a 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Just the way I'm feeling, the situation that we're dealing with right now with my son.
Understood. Dale, how about you?
On my level, I say a 1.
1.
Because seeing my son going through the hurt, the pain, and the psychological impact on him also impact the parents.
Yes.
So I say a 1.
Yes, indeed. Thank you all for sharing that. So what we normally do in the class is we check in with folks, but then we also do deep breathing as a way to center ourselves in this moment. So for the purpose of having the guests, we're going to do one big deep breath. So I would like to, of course, ask you all to join me, and we're going to come all the way in. We're going to release that, because we know with the type of environment that our kids are in today in this climate, the types of trauma that we are often exposed to, we have to also have good mindfulness practices as well. So look, y'all, today we are talking about hate crimes, but not just hate crimes. We're talking about them within the context of schools. And this is very important. I want people to understand this contextually. Hate crimes, right? We're talking hate crimes in America have only been documented since 1988. All right. Now I'm going to age myself. I was 1. Okay. I was 1 years old when that happened. Now we have to talk about what that means for a country when we know our ancestors were forced to come here 1619 in the English colonies. So you mean from 1619 to 1988, there was no hate to document, right?
Wow.
Right.
So that's one piece of context we have to keep in mind. And I say that because we know this country, based on our experience in particular, or indigenous people, was founded through hate towards us. So this is something that your son dealt with that honestly wouldn't even be counted as a hate crime. Right, because unless it goes through a particular court system, and unless the school documents it, it's just viewed as maybe a discipline referral, or as a situation when somebody was bullied. Right. Also, context, very important. We're talking about Minooka, Illinois. Right. And I want people to understand Minooka, Illinois. We're talking about a town that I would really say is almost like a suburb of Joliet, but in all, it is about 45, maybe to an hour from Chicago. It is, of course, a Native American term, right? Because we know that ain't like a European term like that. Right. This word, I had to look this up. This translates to great land.
Wow.
Now think about that in connection to what you all are going to educate us on, right? In many ways, it's hypocritical.
Correct.
Absolutely. Translates to great land. 13,000 people in this town, 3% in poverty. So people are taken care of by and large, right? 81% white, 3% black as of 2020. So we're talking roughly 400 black folks. In 2000, there were about 4,000 people. 6 were black. That's 0.15%, right? Now, since then, of course, it has changed drastically. Let's add some more context. There have been several stories over the years where students, parents have alleged racism, have proven that their kids have been the victims and targets of racial animosity, racist hate crimes, right? We know that the school districts out there, again, we're just talking about the facts as we see them, have Native American mascots labeled as Indians. And correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking elementary age,
Correct.
right? Even through high school.
Right.
One of their most famous former residents, Nick Offerman, who was in Parks and Recreation and various other shows, even in the year 2020, he was using his platform to say, we need to get rid of this mascot. Like this is, expect like Major League Baseball teams, Cleveland Indians used to be, right?
Exactly.
So I'm saying all this because I want folks to know in 2023, 2 female black students were subjected to racist taunts and harassments by a peer, leading to a Grundy County judge issuing an emergency stalking no contact order against the student accused of the attacks. So we're talking amongst both school districts there, or the various school districts. In 2019, 2020, there was a lynching threat lawsuit. A former student, Stanley Fabian, sued the school district, alleging that a student threatened to lynch him and used the N-word in a classroom in 2019. The lawsuit, which alleged a culture of systemic racism, was settled in 2021. In 2019, for example, a school board member resigned following allegations that she stated she did not want her children taught by a black teacher.
Wow.
Hundreds of students protested the alleged remark and the subsequent departure of a popular principal. And of course, like we said before, there's the Indian mascot controversy. I think this is important to understand too, because when we say these stories, we have to understand that there are folks on the ground in these communities, like you all in these schools, who see these things happen and do not agree with them. And as such, they stand up and they speak out, which leads me to you all's story. So, Kim, Dale, why are we here today? I listed all those other stories. Why is your story another unfortunate example of this?
Well, I can start. My husband and I, back in 2022, we were living on the west side of Joliet, and we were looking to upgrade to a bigger home. So we purchased a home out. It's still Joliet, but it's the far west side of Joliet. It's Joliet, but it's the Minooka School District. So back in 2022, my son, we started him in the 2nd grade there at Minooka High School. And at that time, I'll be honest, I was not aware of the prior issues that were prevalent in the school district. So starting him at that school, Jones Elementary School there, we noticed just a number of issues that we were having, not only with the students, but also with the teachers and the administration. While he was there, he had been called a nigger. He'd been called a slave. One of the teachers there, kids were outside playing for recess. My son was accused of pushing another student. And it looked like the students are trying to get in line. They're all pushing. But anyway, she singled my son out and was like, I will make you the permanent end of the line. And so from that respect, I'm like, why would you say that? Why couldn't he be the permanent front of the line? And so my husband and I went and we talked with the principal, the assistant principal, and we explained that you don't do that. He's an African-American male. You don't do that. And then I explained to her the history as far as what Rosa Parks, how, the blacks had to sit at the back of the bus. And it was, to my surprise, she knew nothing about Rosa Parks. And at that time, during that meeting, the principal, Dr. Heiser, explained to her the history of Rosa Parks and her plight. Then from that point, the most egregious incident at Jones was when there was an incident where my son was going, I believe, down, he was passing between classes or whatever. and a teacher that was not even his homeroom teacher accused him of stealing. And from that point, my son, the whole day, was questioned, accused of being a thief, stealing. She accused him of taking something off a hall. It was a hall with people, the kids post stuff on the hall. She stated that she saw him take a pen and said, "Why are you taking that or stealing that? Put it back." And from that point, they questioned my son, and my son was like, "I didn't do that. I didn't take anything." And so his regular teacher, his homeroom teacher, questioned him, tried to get him to admit to stealing. And when he didn't, she's like, "Well, if you don't admit, then I'm going to send you down to the principal's office." And they did that. They sent him down to the principal's office. At that time, the assistant principal, again, questioned him about stealing. And then she was like, "Well, there's surveillance videos in the hallway. What will that show?" Now, my son at that time was about 8 years old. He's like, "I don't know." He's confused. So then my son told me she pulled up a laptop, kind of like what you have sitting in your lap. And she looked at it, and then she told him, "Well, why don't we just say not to touch other people's things?" He was sent back to the classroom, and now his homework teacher was like, "Well, what happened? What did the assistant principal say?" And he was like confused. "Well, she said not to touch anyone's things." So then at the end of the day, his homeroom teacher then sent him down the hall and made him apologize to the original teacher that accused him of stealing, him apologize. My husband and I, at that point, I was like, this is totally ridiculous. We actually had a meeting at the school with the principal, the assistant principal. The teachers were not there at that point. And then actually the HR lady came in, Sarah Massey. And from that point, I demanded to see the surveillance video because I questioned my son left, right, backward, forward. His story states the same. I'm like, I believe my son. So I demanded, let me see the surveillance video. And first they was like, well, it's other students on there. I said, no. He was accused of something. I want to see it. So we went in, and I remember specifically we went in and they played it. And when I looked at the surveillance video, I wanted to cry because what my son said happened. And at that point, he's walking down the hall. He doesn't make no contact with the walls or anything. There's other students in the hall. One little girl, her head up against the wall, touching. But they singled my son out, had him in the office. I said, the only thing you did not do was call the police and had him handcuffed, which I've seen stories like that on the news. And from that point, he was out of school for over a week or two. And then me, because I was like, my husband and I work, I'm like, how can we make this right? So I said, he comes back, but they need to apologize. And then I remember Dr. House was like, well, we can't force people to apologize. Like, but you forced him to apologize for something he didn't do. And then I recall my husband and I sitting there at the end of that meeting, and I was like, do you know what you guys did? Do you know what they call people that did what you did to my son? And every last one of them said Karens, because that's exactly what they did. They accused him of something. And like with that incident, I was like, that's not acceptable. So from that point, that situation, along with being called.
Can we pause right there for a second? Mm-hmm. So, wow. Okay. So he starts going to, this is elementary school,
Elementary school.
So how old was he when the N-word and that first happened? Was that first grade, second grade?
Second grade.
Okay. And then when this situation happened, was that third grade, you said? Or,
that was.
Or the same school year?
I believe that was the third grade.
Third grade.
Right. Then the third grade, I believe. Yes.
Okay. And even with the N-word situation, what was the result of that? Was there anybody held accountable?
No. So what we would have meetings like he was called the nigger. He was called the slave.
Called a monkey.
He was called a monkey.
And these are all by his peers.
By his peers.
Same grade.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Same grade.
Second grade.
Second, third grade, even fourth grade.
Yeah.
Right. And
after
so
fifth grade.
In fifth grade at Minooka, the intermediate school. Yes. But with those incidents, we would bring it to their attention. We would go in and meet. Their investigation was, I remember specifically when he was called a nigger by a young girl, they talked to her parents. Dr. Heiser talked to her parents. He came back. He was like, well, they said that they have friends that are black and that she wouldn't do that. They don't know. And I was like, that's not acceptable. And I was just like, so even that was like toward the end of the school year. School's about to get out. And I'm like, if that was your investigation, that's not acceptable. So I then brought the superintendent into it, Superintendent Kinder, and I was like, this is not acceptable. I emailed, called, no response until after school was out. And then she told me, Kinder, that my emails had went into spam. Although I had CC'd the assistant principal and the principal and all the parties on the email. So that issue was never addressed. That was the end of his 4th grade year when he was called the nigger the last time. And so then we were very nervous about sending him to then the intermediate school, which starts is 5th and 6th grade. We kind of went back and forth with that, but we sent them like, okay, new school, new start, same issues.
So with a situation where he was accused of stealing and they showed you the footage that showed that he did not in fact steal,
Nothing.
what was their response then outside of saying we can't force somebody to apologize? Like,
Right. Well, and I know I'm doing a lot of
No,
talking,
you gonna
but
talk, you
I
good.
know in that meeting when I looked at it and I had him play it twice, I'm like, and that was the shocker. Like I said, everything he said, Mom, I was just walking. I didn't touch anything. So then Dr. Heiser, he was like, well, this surveillance video is from a different angle. I was like, look, this fully has captured my son in the wall. I don't care what angle. What she said he did not do. You know, and then I do recall Miss Massey there, and she was just like, there was definitely too much time focused on this incident. She said the whole day that was not, I remember her saying that in the meeting. But besides that, him saying, well, maybe it's a different, and I'm like, I don't care. It shows him walking. He didn't touch the hall. So to me, it was like he was trying to, you know, make an excuse. Like, oh, maybe no, it didn't. It did not happen. And like I said, so that was his explanation for that. They didn't have an explanation.
and so nobody, from your knowledge, of course, was probably ever held accountable, you know?
Not that they shared with us.
Yeah, because my experience is also too, whether it involves a child or a staff member, if we know that person is guilty, or the person that's responsible for it, they'll always say, well, we can't share, you know, what happened with them, but we can assure you that, you know, maybe something was done. But what was really troubling to me is the fact that they were honing in to literally prove the fallacy of your son to me being a criminal, right?
Right.
At this
Labeling
young
as a
age.
criminal.
Like,
Absolutely.
right. And
The whole day, no call to us. My husband didn't get a call. I didn't get a call. Nothing. My son fending for himself against these adults, accusing him of being a thief.
so again, we're talking 2nd, 3rd, and 4th before he goes to the intermediate school. So
Right.
your young child is dealing with this for 3 years. And oftentimes I'll have parents, various backgrounds, ask me, like, when do we begin to have these conversations with our kids? And we know as Black folks, we don't have the luxury of waiting too soon, waiting too late, you know, because like if we, sometimes we want to protect their innocence, but we also know that unfortunately the world that they can be in won't view them that same way, whether it be maybe an officer, in this case, maybe a teacher, you know, or any other adult. And we know there are various studies that show that when they put kids of various backgrounds, same classroom setting, teachers, diverse teachers will look at the Black boy above all when trying to determine if someone, not that somebody did anything wrong in that moment, if they are going to do something, right? So it's deeply ingrained in culture, and it's even within the school system as a whole. So if we're not getting staff members that are holding themselves accountable, then we can only imagine what they're doing when a child does it, because maybe they're like, well, my child probably would say the same thing because, and what other way could it be? Because in that situation, you can be like, it wasn't me, this was this child, so let's make sure we discipline the child. But for your situation, they said, well, that child has Black friends. And that's when we see the beginning of this like delusional scapegoating of, well, I got a Black friend, I can't be.
So I can't be racist or
So by the time we're at the end of 4th grade, so how was your son navigating this throughout this time?
Well, he will always bring it up, talk about it. I don't want to go to school. I don't feel comfortable. they keep picking on me. And that let indicate to us that it's a problem. And we couldn't avoid, we had to communicate with him and talk with him and try to encourage him, but at the same time, it was hurting because he keep bringing it up. And we knew that was an issue, that was a problem. Yes.
Yeah, and then too, there was times, because a lot of times I would like drop him off to school, and we would always kind of be in the car. We say our little prayer before we go, and he would want to go, and then I would feel bad because I had to go to work. My husband worked, and I'm like, oh, I'm sending them. But hey, they're supposed to call me if there's issues and stuff like that. But I do recall he started not wanting to go to school at Jones, and then, like I said, the incident where he was accused of theft. And then a couple other incidents, he would be out, and then I would send him back. But I know particularly when he started Minooka Intermediate School, he did not want to start that school. But then we talked to him like, hey, let's see what it is. And he was just like, it's going to be the same thing. And he didn't want to go. And then I it just start emotionally affecting him. He's going somewhere that he knew that, the kids are picking, they're calling him out of his name. Not only that, the racial stuff, but bullying, calling them fat, this and that. And then when he's reaching out to the people who are in position of trust and authority to help him, then they're not helping him. So now he's just kind of like, you know what I'm saying? We hear about it when we get home, when he gets home, and then we try to deal. And so that was the thing, because I guess I was trying to be more optimistic, like, hey, I'm taking time off work. We're going in. I'm talking. I'm getting the meets. I'm docking my husband. And then after a while, especially with the last incident that happened at the intermediate school, my husband like, no, we're done talking because this is not getting better. And then we saw that it was just really just negatively affecting him.
So with many of these situations, you're saying that your child, he's letting staff know, but in many of these cases, staff wasn't notifying you all that something happened?
Some instances, they were notifying us that it was happening. Others, we would find out from him, and then I would have to address it. So some stuff they would not let us know. So then I just let them know, look, if anything happens regarding my son, whether it's big, small, or whatever, call me. Call me at work, call my husband. We need to know about it right then and there. So at that point, then they would, call. I know one teacher that he had for 5th grade, things would happen, and she didn't want to call us because she felt like, even though we had told them before, you need to contact us, she wanted to handle it herself in the classroom. But then when there continued problems where you're not, then the kids are still doing the same things, then at that point, then you're not handled, then we need to get involved. So I had to really, let her know, no, we need to know.
Yeah. It makes me wonder too, in that situation, going back to what we said previously, the defense mechanism of if that's a white child doing this to a black child, and if this white teacher hasn't already worked through this themselves to understand how they should advocate, then it seems as if they begin to make excuses for it, right?
Exactly.
Because they don't want to think, because in many ways, maybe it could be a reflection on them. Because when I would hear about kids, especially at, the age of 7, right? We know that child is hearing it from an adult, right?
Absolutely.
We know more than likely, especially at that age, it's going to have to be coming from home.
Right.
And a lot of times people don't want to do the inventory, the self-reflection, and say, well, I need to do better too, because that child is a reflection too. It could be of your own household, right? So when these teachers would even inform you about what happened, how would they describe it? Would they describe it in a way to kind of, in many ways, gloss over like it wasn't a big deal? Or would they kind of let you know that they're handling it like the big deal it is?
It seems they sound like they was handling it, but at the same time, they wasn't. They were pushing it under the rug, covering it up. Like you said, no accountabilities. And to go back, these are his same peers coming from the elementary school to the immediate school. And that's the part that we try to tell the principal, the teachers, okay, you're telling us this, but our son gives us a different story, and find out that the teachers, the staff was not telling the truth.
Right. And you know what you're all saying is really a great example of how history works too, right? Your child is dealing with this face to face, right? Face to face.
Yes.
Telling an adult that should handle it with the utmost importance that it is. but funneling it through whatever bias they have that they haven't worked through, it comes out as a completely different story.
Absolutely.
Now, imagine what this looks like before we have technology like that, and you pass that down, and that situation wasn't that big of a deal, or so many of these stories aren't reported on or talked about because honestly, it can be killed. It can be deaded in that schoolroom before it gets to you. So, thankfully, your child was advocating for himself. Thankfully, you all used your voice to advocate, because the thing is, and we can get to this, we talked about it, but you know that if you don't speak up, even if your child makes it through, and is relatively okay, but that compounds because the next child is going to deal with it too.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yep.
And as we said when we started this, I went through about 4 stories. We know it's way more than that.
Oh, yes.
right? And we can get into that too.
Right.
Yes.
But so I think one of the things everybody listening to this should understand, especially the educators and all of that, we are talking about a systemic and a cultural issue. This is not exclusive to Minooka and their school district. This is stuff that I've traveled around the country to address. It's local, it's national, it's international. To quote my brother Fred Hampton Jr., we have way too many people in all facets of life who are reactionaries versus revolutionary. And I'm saying this in terms of the school system in this context, right? Because what a school system would do is, if that racist bullying happens or the racist situation happens, they will then say, okay, we need to do something now. We need to respond. We need to react, or we need to teach the kids how to be kind. And racism isn't a matter of being kind, right? But we know at a foundational, like elementary level, kids have to understand why that's harmful language. We can't gloss over it and just say, be nice, be kind, use nice words. No, but when you are revolutionary or proactive, you have things in place already that address it. And I can't throw out a blanket percentage, but I will say that there are a whole lot of schools across this country. I would estimate the majority that don't have systems in place that can properly address these things, right? Because you can't just say have good character, because those words aren't just harmful or racist words. It is a reflection of a system that is the reason why at one point in time there weren't black people in Minooka. There were only 6 people, right, at one point in time. And also too, there's the issue of y'all don't even live there. But the school is there. That's a whole other thing. We gotta go to City Hall about, like, I don't understand this. Like, you have a Plainfield High School, Joliet Water. Where are we at right now? So when the teachers would call you and address these issues, though, like, did they ever say that they were going to do anything school-wide, or like how were they going to address it moving forward?
I know there was one incident where he was called a monkey, and I know he came home, well, you picked him up from school, and he mentioned that he was called a monkey by a student. And I know my husband, you can tell he had a conversation with the principal, or
the principal called me, and he told me what happened, and I called the principal, and I let her know what he told me, what took place at school. Y'all keep saying you're going to fix the problem, but the problem's still there. And me being upset, I let the principal know, listen, that's it. No more talking. No more meetings. We got to this got to go to another level.
But she didn't explain. She didn't understand why he was upset about
right. And when I told her that, it's like, okay,
come on, man.
Problem keep coming on same.
He had to explain to her why you don't call a black person a monkey.
Right,
She
and
didn't
I
know
told
the history.
her, right.
And y'all said that made me think too. We got to go back to this. So one of the teachers, y'all said didn't know who Rosa Parks was.
No,
or they didn't.
No.
Nope.
With a straight face, she said.
I asked, do you know who Rosa Parks is? And
never heard of Rosa Parks.
Silent. And then Dr. Heiser is like, oh, yeah, she was the lady. I'm like, okay.
I told her, well, you go back and look at the history books. Do some research. You need to be educated.
If there's anybody listening to this right now, you grown. You don't know Rosa Parks.
Right. But the hypocritical part about it is you're teaching the kids black history, but you're not studying on black history.
Right. And I think she probably she's probably lying, but even if she wasn't, we gotta admit the fact that there are some people who don't, and even with that, there are some folks who they will understand it, but to me, it's the sanitized version. It's like, and really, a lot of times when we teach it like, oh, she did it. It was successful. It doesn't happen
watered
anymore.
Down. And it's only 1 week, maybe 1 week of class.
Exactly.
It's not the whole Black History class.
Right. And see, the thing is too, we know it's like, dang, okay, monkey. Like, I mean, there are some people naive, right? Mm-hmm. But I think people have to understand that it's not. We didn't make that a racist, connotation or relationship, right? Mm-hmm. So it has to be an understanding that when we bring that to you, it's because of the context of that. Correct. And even beyond that, what you have not done previously while we have been here. Mm-hmm. And again, how are these kids learning? So what schools, again, this is what schools do. They like to position themselves as a utopia, right? So you come into the school, we're gonna have all of the pictures everywhere. We might even throw some diverse pictures in there, right? We might have an assembly. We might even, again, have a week of Black history. We're gonna have some of the this is how you treat people, the character traits or the dignity, and this is what we stand for as Indians, which again is very problematic. That don't even sound right coming out of my mouth, but that's the mascot.
Yeah, again, mascot.
Right. Backtrack though. The Indians in a town that's named after indigenous people, where there aren't any indigenous people likely in that school, right, who are from this region, right? Mm-hmm. They ain't even teaching these kids that history about the fact that indigenous people were wiped out, right? Genocide, right? Why that's problematic. Right. But so again, you come to these schools, they want to act like a utopia or a shield, a dome that protect kids from the outside world. But what educators have to understand is kids live in the world. Right. They come in here with all the baggage, right? It's like if we had a church or something like that, you got to address what the people going through. You can't just act like it's not happening. So for all the educators listening, all the parents listening, we have to make these real world concepts matter. You can't tell me the gas prices going up ain't going to impact the school buses.
Absolutely. Everything.
Right. The outside world impacts the school.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So you're in the intermediate school. These same problems began to happen, and this is fifth grade.
Fifth grade.
And your son is visibly frazzled by these situations. So it's not like he's of age to understand something isn't right.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious to know, around this time, were there other Black students that you were aware of that were dealing with something similar?
Yes. There were other students, particularly in his first, and the thing is, because we were having issues not only with the students but with the teachers. My son had went through 3 teachers because we asked him to be removed from that class once, and then the principal the second time was like, no, he needs to be moved, just because of the reactions we were getting from the teachers, which was not in his best interest. But I've talked to the other parents. There was one student in his class when he first started in August where that student was also called a nigger. I believe his parents addressed it. I don't know where that went. And then I've talked to other parents where their kids were, called out of their name, niggers and stuff like that. And I don't know how they dealt with it, but it seems like just from talking with one of the parents, it's like they kind of like my husband was saying, they'll deal with it, but then they don't really deal with it. They kind of like, okay, and let's move on. And then it comes up again, and then it comes up again, and there's no resolution. It's just, but then the only thing is, the problem is in particular with my son, he's subjected to this day after day. And then I had to think, look, I went to school. I didn't have to worry or deal with someone calling me out of my name, a nigger, a slave. So now in 2026, my son has to deal. That's what was the kicker. I'm like, and he shouldn't have to deal with that. He should be able to go to school and get a good education and have fun and reminisce. Oh, I had fun at school, and not have to be dealing with this name calling, this bullying, this racism. So that was very disheartening. So
let's backtrack a little bit too, because for one, I want to make sure that it's documented on this podcast right now that it wasn't just your child. various other children. And again, as a historian, as a speaker, so many times these stories get lost in history. Because again, you know, to quote the great Zora Neale Hurston, if you're silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoy it. Right. So there are various other parents that you all are in community with that have dealt with the same thing. Right. You all are deciding, and I'm sure they're resolving it their own way. We're talking about it right now on a public platform. But you said something interesting too. You said that this isn't something that you even dealt with growing up. So, and I, you know, talking to folks, I'm always asking this question, especially those of us who have seen different parts of America, right? Do you think race relations, you know, it's hard to phrase this the appropriate way because we know there are certain rules and things that have changed and, you know, things we have been exposed to. But do you think that in some way racism is worse than when you were growing up or is getting worse? How would you phrase that?
I think that we've always, you know, there's always been race. I think that it's more, you hear about it more now because people are more verbal about it now. Just the climax of the times that we're living in. Like when I was going to school, I'm sure it was there, but I think people are more emboldened now because of just the whole climate of the country and everything. That's what I think.
That's a great point. And also too, and I'm sorry, Brother Dale, did you want to add something to that?
No, she good. Everything good.
I think what's something interesting you also said is too often we'll try to resolve these issues in school individually. So the child is coming here with the baggage of society. This child is being indoctrinated and taught to carry on that legacy of racism and anti-blackness. And the school, well, then of course they're gonna be ashamed. They don't want this to get out, right? Because the school has to protect their reputation. And of course they getting tax dollars, so the higher the population, the more tax dollars they're gonna get. But if a parent brings this to you, you cannot resolve this issue, y'all, by having individual solutions and conferences. We're talking about a system, a culture, a word that is embedded in how people have been treated nefariously and how we in many ways still continue to be treated. So you can't just be like, okay, there's one black child, we're gonna just have a conference, we're gonna give you a detention, or maybe or whatever it is, you know, like maybe we just give you a slap on the wrist, or maybe we just call home. Then they come up again next week with another kid. We're just gonna call. Y'all gotta have I'm talking to these educators across the country. You got to address, it has to be a conference with the whole school. It has to be an intentional effort to hire better teachers, right? It has to be an effort to implement consistent training, because when educators go through these schools to get their degree, and speaking from experience, when I went, you don't take anything on culturally responsive teaching. You don't take anything on how to teach students who look different than you, which really you're being taught from a Eurocentric lens, from the perspective of all of these kids have to get in line with how we do things, right? And I even recall, you know, before you saying that it appeared to you that they looked at your child as the problem for reporting it, as opposed to the kids who did it.
Yep, that's true.
Is that true?
Yep, that's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
So okay, so now we're at a point where in intermediate school, various children are dealing with this, and this is within the past school year, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So the same situations, the N-word, monkey phrases, being called a slave, right?
Go back to Africa.
You go back to Africa, Yep.
Is there anything from your knowledge in terms of the curriculum that addresses this? Like, was he taking maybe some social studies classes or history classes that could maybe even give kids curriculum-based education that could help them understand that this is wrong?
No, because like I said, I'm also very intricately involved in like what he's learning. I've had him bring, definitely not the social studies book. There may be like I said, maybe a couple pages, you know, regarding slaves and stuff like that, slavery. I even asked the school, not only Jones, but intermediate schools, for some cultural diversity training. I mean, can you sit these kids down and just like, hey, this name calling is not acceptable? No feedback from that. Nothing. I didn't get anything back from that. So I know they're not doing it. The only thing that they have like this social emotional learning class where they have to do that, but it doesn't deal with racism. It doesn't deal with any of that stuff. It does not.
Yeah, nothing that's dealing with the racial trauma.
No, not at all.
We're talking about a young man from the age of, I'm assuming like 7 or 8,
Right.
has been dealing with these issues. And again, like, how does a school continue to keep going without realizing that this has to be addressed? As I said from the onset, this is a district, a community that at one point in time was 0.15% black. We're talking 26 years ago.
Wow.
Right? Now we're talking about there are 3% black folks, so 400. And its community is growing. The southwest suburban region of Chicago is continuing to grow. And with all of that said, like, if these issues don't get resolved expeditiously, eventually it's going to continue to blow up in the school's face. With that said, so we know there's a long history of this happening. I want to play a clip from a common friend of ours who dealt with something similar, and I want to react to it in terms of what you know about this case, and also too what justice begins to look like you moving forward. We could roll the clip.
Okay.
This moment, it was like fight or flight.
19-year-old Stanley Fabian flashes back a year to his senior psychology class at Minooka High School. He says a white classmate brought in a large cookie.
When I jokingly reached for it, he was at the front of the class. He turned around and said, "If you touch that cookie, Kate, I'm going to lynch you."
I'm going to lynch you.
I didn't really know how to respond. It was like a deer in headlights kind of moment.
It was also a watershed moment for him and his mom, who went right to Minooka District 111's administration.
And it was apparent from day one that this was not something that they really were going to treat seriously.
T. Saxton Washington says the student was eventually suspended, but it was just the beginning of a now legal fight to change a culture of what they claim is systemic racism at the high school, which they hope this lawsuit will address.
Well, for 4 years, I've heard multiple slurs being drawn around towards African American students, Mexican students.
Fabian says he was afraid to speak up while still in high school. His mother says she became supportive of a lawsuit after talking to other families who'd also been on the receiving end of racial slurs at school.
This was not just his story. In fact, this has been something that's been going on for at least 5 decades.
Washington points to the high school's 1987 Slave Days activities, which included lynching and slave trade simulations, as examples of an entrenched racist culture that she claims former and current school administrators don't take seriously. Fabian's attorney, Gene Hollander, says change is the goal.
One has to be training, reporting, discipline.
The students should feel protected. And as of right now, I don't think the majority of minority students feel protected.
A Minooka High School spokesperson says the district is not yet aware of the lawsuit, but it's policy not to comment on pending litigation anyway. Dana Kozlov, CBS 2 News.
Dana, thank you. Racial.
So when you see that story, and we're looking at, of course, that's high school, right? But what I think is powerful about you coming forward with this is you're saying that it's not just when you get to 9th grade. You're saying it's elementary. It's intermediate, and if you don't nip it in the bud, it becomes something worse. We're talking about a young man at the time reaching for a cookie and being threatened that way. Wow. So you know an aspect of Black history, which of course is the aspect of the trauma we face. So you're learning something, right? Yep. And then you go back even further, and you find at a time when there probably weren't even any Black folks out here, they were having mock slave trades and auctions, right? So I think in a way, because we are, again, we both in OT, your son not getting to that point yet in high school, I think you all decided to make a bold move recently, because as of this recording, the school year is not even over. But your son, you know what I'm saying, he's here with us right now, right? When most folks be like, wait, he's supposed to be in school right now, right? So what did you all decide to do, and why did you make that decision?
Okay. And I know, like, as I stated, we were having issues. And I was going in, doing meetings and all of that. The last time I had met with him was in February, where he was then transferred to another class due to that teacher just being totally inappropriate with my son.
Well, can you pause right there? What do you mean by inappropriate?
Well, with this teacher, it was a lot of bullying in the classroom, where my son felt like she was not helping him Like if he had a question about work, she was being mean. And in addition to that, there were a lot of the Caucasian girls in the classroom that were teasing him, calling them fat, ugly, and all of that, cursing. And then when he would reach out to that student, to that teacher, Miss Lown, she was like, well, what do you want me to do about it? What do you want me to do about it? Now, because we had that history with that, I had talked with the principal, and she was like, look, anytime there's an issue, she would tell my son, look, come seek me out and come to the office. So I remember one particular incident where he's being teased, and these kids are smart too. Then they're mean mugging him. So he would tell her, and she's like, what do you want me to do? And then at that point, my son was like, well, that's bullying. And she was like, that's not bullying. Go Google it. And she told him to Google it. So I was like, wow, okay. So we had a meeting about that. And then she was very upset, was trying to tell us she'd been teaching so many years this way. She do stuff. I said, that's not appropriate what you did to tell my son to go Google something. Also considering the other issues that he had from the prior class to here. And so then we moved him, the principal, we moved him to another class, a whole nother team. So now we're in March. He's adjusting to a new team, a new set of teachers. At that point, I was like, maybe we should just not let him go back. My husband I was always trying to be optimistic. My husband was like, no, we don't need to send him back. So we sent him back. And with that incident, he's on a new team. He's at lunch. And then he sees a student that he used to play youth football with the Joliet Ravens. So he goes up to that student and just says hi. And this student looks at him and says, shut the fuck up, nigger. From that point, my son reached out to his teacher, his new teacher, like, this is what happened. She immediately like, okay, she tells the principal. So this particular incident was handled by the assistant principal, Miss Langhoff. So what happened is, she brought my son and the other student down. My son was saying, hey, this is what happened. And from that point, the other students there denying, this is not, I didn't say it. He said something to me, and my son's like, no, I didn't say anything. So it's a back and forth. And then Miss Langhoff asked my son, she was like, well, maybe you misheard the student. Are you sure you heard him right? And my son was like, no, this is what he said. Well, maybe you misheard him. It was in the cafeteria, it was loud. Maybe you didn't hear him right. Let's just count this as a misunderstanding. And then the other student, she's like, well, how can we make this better? And so my son said, then Ms. Langhoff suggested, why don't you guys high five and go back to class? So that's how that was dealt with. So what she did, my son was coming home on the bus. She called me. I'm at home. And she was like, hey, there was an incident at school. Your son thought he heard someone call him the N-word. But once we talked, he was saying it was a misunderstanding. I was like, I'm going to talk to my son when he gets home. So then when my son came home, he's like, no. I said, you heard him? I was like, you looked in his mouth and you heard him say that? And so then I called her back. She didn't answer. I sent the email. I'm like, don't ever coax my son and try to make him change his story. We don't misunderstand when someone calls us a nigger. And I said, I don't appreciate you doing that. And so she was trying to cover, well, they both were going back and forth. I said, no, this was done without any provocation, and it's not acceptable. And from that point, I knew, I'm like, not only is he not being protected in the school, the administration, the principal, assistant principal is trying to make excuses like saying he misheard something. But not only that, again, I'm looking at the emotional well-being of my son. So at that point, on March 12th, we pulled him out of school. We was like, he cannot go back there because, and then at one point, they were telling me, well, we can't control what the students say. We can't control what comes out their mouth. And I was like, okay, if you can't control it, then I can't continue to subject my son to this. We pulled him out, and we're at this point, we're homeschooling him, trying to get him through the remainder of the 5th grade. I've been contacted. I contacted the school to try to see if he could. I'm like, they were insisting he come back. I said, no. We end up having to start him into counseling to deal with a lot of this. And so right now, he's finished in the 5th grade at home. But based on just the whole 3.5 years of just incident from not only the one school, the grade school, to intermediate, we haven't even touched the junior high and the high school, but I know the history. I don't want him to continue to be subjected to that, and he shouldn't have to.
Wow. I'm taking another deep breath, y'all. That's wow.
Yeah. And also go back where they mentioned, I believe when he was at Jones Elementary School, the teachers would try to get him to sign a confession letter, like.
Oh yeah.
And we told him no. And remind of the Central Park 5 in their situation, they trying to get him to do this. That I said, no way. He's not signing no confession letter without you communicating with the parent.
Yeah.
And we told the teacher, don't ever have them sign nothing and don't have them bring it home.
So we are like there are so many levels to what y'all just explained, right?
They
like
call it a think letter,
right.
and make them write out. And then he was like, well, I didn't do that, but make them write. I'm like, no, we're not doing
Symbolic
that.
of a criminal system,
We're not doing that.
School to prison pipeline.
Yeah,
These are all
there you go.
prevalent examples of what that
Yes.
is. Even if it's a school where we're saying the income level is high and things like that, this is an example of how our kids get singled out.
Yes.
Your child could be quiet child, minding their business, saying hi to somebody, and being called out their name like that. And then when you report it, you're viewed as a bad child to the point now where you all are both working and you have to figure out how to homeschool, right?
Yes.
And the symbolism behind him being, in many ways, made to feel like he was hallucinating because he told the teacher what he heard. We don't just hear that.
No.
I don't care how loud it is. We don't just hear that.
You're going to hear that word.
Right.
What?
But racism is not a misunderstanding.
No, it's not.
Racism is not a misunderstanding. It cannot be solved by high fives.
No.
It cannot be solved by somebody making you feel like you didn't hear what you heard. And again, it's almost as if he was made to think, and we are made to think that we have just created this whole thing in our imagination.
Right.
Of course nobody would say that. What are you talking about? No, he didn't say that to you. Come on, let's just high five and call it a day.
Exactly.
No.
Unacceptable. No.
That is unbelievable.
And when the child can feel comfortable to say them words with no conviction.
Right.
That's
And like I told the sister principal when I talked with her, I said, we know it started from the home. That's where the problem is.
Exactly.
Deal with the parents. Say, look, this will not be tolerated from your child.
Right.
And it needs to be stopped. And we will not have it go with the school.
So when we talk about a school trying to rectify this issue, and they said something like, well, we can't control what somebody said. Right. Well, we didn't say that, right?
Right.
We know you can't control, but you can discipline the child, and then you can put in preventative measures. Again, now you at a point where you should at least be reactionary, but you can be reactionary in a way that creates a culture and system that seeks to prevent it moving forward about what you stand for. 2020 was a very important time for a lot of people who drew that line in the sand and said, this is where we stand, this is where we are, this is what we won't tolerate. And as we can see, during that time, again, you have professional sports teams like the Washington, formerly Redskins, the Cleveland, formerly Indians, for example, who on that level changed their names. But we have a community here, even when celebrities, Nick Offerman is saying, y'all should change it. They're like, nah, we don't want to, because they haven't made it to that point culturally, right? That's it's bizarre. And again, you cannot, so when we talk about racism, iceberg tip is telling somebody don't use that word, right? That's an inappropriate word to use to a black person. You shouldn't say that word as a white person. That's disrespectful. That's racist, right? That's just tip of the iceberg. Now we know once you get underneath, we know the system, right? Because then why isn't your child learning about himself in the school, right? Why aren't we decentering whiteness in the schools and things like that, right? And then you get lower than that, it's the whole system, right? And it's an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people to grapple with. But as we stand, as of this recording, 2026, it is something that you cannot ignore.
You can't.
And ignoring racism, to me, and what we see historically, just means that you are going to be the victim of the bigger economic issues, because racism, first and foremost, was created as a diversion, a way to distract between how black and white people at one point in time were both being taken advantage of in this system, going back to the 1600s, right? And that's not to say that white folks aren't being taken advantage of economically, but the fact that you would still go delve into that those racist waters as opposed to understanding the economic issues we're all facing just shows that you are still subjected to that same issue right there. So you said something that's very important too. For one, I want to commend you all for taking that stand about pulling your child out. I know that had to be very tough, right? For a variety of reasons, right? Especially at an age like that. What does education then look like for him moving forward? Because he's in 5th grade going to 6th. So we talking, I mean, at least 6 more years of traditional, schooling. Are you all going to continue to homeschool? Will you try a different district?
And we've kind of been talking about that. What we're working on now, we would like to try to transfer him to another district that would a more diverse district, where he wouldn't deal with as much as what he's dealt with at Minooka. The homeschooling is a lot because we both work full time. So it's a lot, but we've been juggling and doing it. But my son's the type, he's a lovable boy, so he likes the interactions. He likes the social. So right now it's kind of awkward because, he's home. So he's with me or my husband. So he's missing that component, the social part of it. So we try to get him involved in football, jiu-jitsu, things of that nature. But I don't want him to be deprived of the social,
it's an important time,
right. I mean, if we have to do it, we have to do it, but homeschool. But I do feel now that he's home, he's more at peace. We're more at peace because I was nervous dropping him off at school because not knowing what his day was going to be like. So if right now we're homeschooling, if we could get him in another school district, not saying that he's not going to have those issues at other school districts, but maybe it won't be as bad, as prevalent as what we've experienced at Minooka.
Yeah, I think what any parent would ask for is that you have adults in place in those positions of power, of authority, that would treat your child like their child, right?
Exactly.
And how they would want their child to be treated.
Exactly.
And we also, too, being honest, like I said before, educators in general, we aren't going into classrooms equipped with how to handle this appropriately, which means that it is incumbent upon every school administrator, school board to put the proper channels in place to make sure educators are prepared. But bare minimum, if you are leading with love, compassion, and empathy, have a basic understanding of American history, then you should know that we got to do something better for these children moving forward. And there's always the conundrum, too, because we understand how neighborhoods in larger cities, whether it be Chicago, New York, LA, whatever, have been redlined and how resources have been extracted. When I grew up on the far south side of Chicago, my neighborhood schools, again, didn't have the same resources as other schools. So, and having family members who are in the city now, their kids have to test into schools, again, outside of their neighborhood. So then that puts that parent, in an uncomfortable position to have to drive maybe 30 minutes to the other side of town, maybe the hour to the other side of town. And then in the suburbs, again, we going for more space, right? We got a diverse environment, but that might not also be reflected in the school, right? Or also, you might live in a town, but then you have to go to a school in a different town. Right. So with that said, too, I'm glad that you actually have them in therapy. I think that's a very important thing that we all need to make sure that we are aware of with our kids, because I have channels and systems I put in place for when kids deal with this, but I'm always very clear in letting folks know that this is not a replacement for professional help.
Right.
I'm of the belief that everybody in America needs some therapy. I mean, we lived through 2020. I mean, 20 whatever now. Like everything. I mean, we done seen some stuff, especially in our community, and we need to be able to talk to folks who can help us make sense of this, and we have to make sure we understand that that's a good thing. It's a privilege to exist now in a time when we can be able to find therapy for our kids, right? And be able to take them there, because I think both of us are part of a generation that was shunned. You were looked at differently, right? And we were told to maybe just pray, but then you pray, you do something about it. Do something about it too. I think it's also important for any parent that's listening that has a child that has dealt with something like this, that you give them the opportunity to express how they feel if ever they face something like this, because you don't know how that is impacting them emotionally, socially, mentally, right? So give them an avenue to express. One of the things I even do with my own kids, just in general, when they deal with any type of stress, is I tell them, you got to get it out of you.
Right.
I know we don't see the pain like a cut, but it harmed you. It's here. So you're going to go for a run. You're going to walk. What you going to do? Draw. You're going to play your instrument. You know, I got a bag in the basement. You're going to go downstairs, hit the bag. You got to hit something. I know. Listen, I know y'all wanted to hit something. Yes. Because even as parents, we got to do that too. It has to be channeled constructively. Otherwise, it will tear us down. It has the potential to tear everybody around us down, right? Another thing that's very important for folks who are listening is we have to make sure that we are empowering our kids too, to help them understand that how they may have been treated in that situation is not a reflection of who they are. It's a reflection of that person, right? I tell my kids, my daughters have dealt with some situations like that, and I have to make sure they understand that hate is not your burden. You don't hold on to that hot coal. You throw that. Like, people can only give you what they have inside. And the fact that you feel a certain way, and you didn't even, the fact that you wanted to report it, and you don't think of just going up to a white person and saying this and that, it just means that you are filled with an abundance of love and understanding, right? So don't internalize that. James Baldwin says that profoundly. That the N-word, nigga, that's not our problem. Like, leave us out of this. Leave my son, leave my daughter out of this. And if that's what you want to do, y'all going over there and play over there by the cliff.
That's right.
And then also, too, another thing we have to make sure we do is we got to make sure our kids are empowered through education. So I always tell audiences when I speak to them, this is important because once you understand that it's not your burden, now we have to fill our kids with what we call in black community would be racial esteem or racial pride, right? Meaning that we have pride in who we are in spite of being told that we're something else, right? Even to that degree, I say, like, we don't even want to say it happened because we're black. I have never been treated wrong because I'm black. I have never been the target of anti-blackness because I'm black. It is because of how you view it, right? That treatment is because of how you view it, not because of who I am, right? Because I don't want to change. I don't need to change. I'm not dyeing my skin. I'm not doing none of that stuff. I'm not no nose job, nothing. This is who I am, right? You got to correct the issue that you have, right? And if we show our kids an abundance of examples of people who have persevered through this. Something I do as a practice is and this is, again, we talking about the teacher said Google bullying. Okay, this teacher should have did this instead. Go to Google and Google Black History on this date, and learn something, right? This is something anybody can do, no matter if you got a degree, whatever date it is, put that date in, Black History Fact, you're going to find something, right? I'm talking to my kids recently about the child crusades in Alabama when the kids were out there protesting. I'm talking to them about, the Freedom Riders. I'm talking to them about Ida B. Wells. You're going to find something every day that we did to resist. That gives us courage. Even beyond that, I want to have our kids see and know that we were something before we fought racism, because we are not here just to fight against racism. We are here to enjoy this life and this existence. We are more than that. We can show them inventors and creators. We can show them who they were in Africa. Those things are very important because if our kids don't have that point of view and a mindset, they begin to do more than internalize. They begin to view themselves the way that child or that adult viewed them. Right. So I think that you all are doing a profound job with, as we talk about now, like what justice looks like. You all are already modeling this internally, right? I know you all are doing the work. I know you all got them in therapy. This is how we get justice internally. And I would say that's the most important aspect of justice, because we want to focus on the forms of justice firstly that we can control. Because we can't, like they said, we can't control what somebody say, right? That's the only thing they got right. So, and with that said, having gone through a hate crime experience myself, I can't control what that person does or what the judge says, right? I can only control how I view it, metabolize it, and then what I do with it moving forward. But we also know that there is an effort and desire to get some form of external justice, because we have that right and we demand better and we should get better.
Exactly.
Now that your child is out of that school, are you all seeking to pursue any other forms of justice?
Yeah, I know we are seeking to file a lawsuit against the school district, and the reason being not only for what my son went through, but then from just the other stories from the other parents that their kids have gone through. And what I'm looking at is not only am I looking at just what's best for my son, but I'm also looking at the other black and brown students that are coming after him. They shouldn't have to endure that. And I feel like the school is not taking it seriously. So we are looking to file a lawsuit against the school district. Not only that, but then just the emotional trauma that my son has experienced as a result of this by them, what I feel, pushing things on the rug and not addressing them properly.
Oh, for sure. You can, I mean, I can't imagine like those, when you all went through, I want everybody to understand too. We're talking about a child who, 11?
He's 11.
11 years old,
Turned
right?
11.
Yeah.
That's a lifetime,
Yeah.
right? There are some people who don't have any stories like that who look like us. Maybe one incident, maybe none. We're talking this child, 11 years old, has dealt with a lifetime of racial abuse. It reminds me of a story also in this area of a young man named Brooke who went to Plainfield South, but his situation was based on at a rural university.
Okay.
I heard about that.
Rural university when he was again racially bullied and hate crime football team at a rural university. And something that, and this is still a work in progress, but he decided to withdraw from the school and now he's at Morehouse, right? And I think that's an important thing for us too to gather from this, that so, you know, finding the perfect home and the perfect community, it's a difficult thing, right? The perfect school, because the school can have great reviews, great test scores, but we don't know what that cultural piece looks like, right? So it is also incumbent upon us to find ways maybe outside of school to like, how can we put our kids in a rich black community, right? In an environment where they can be themselves, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I think from what I'm seeing from what he's experienced so far in Morehouse, it's like night and day, right?
Wow, yeah.
So I think that's something for us all to consider moving forward. And we know now what was going on around the country. I mean, HBCUs have been getting an influx of people trying to go to these schools.
Yep. Also, I want the people to know that we didn't move from our black neighborhoods like we're going to be better in a white neighborhood. We move because we just want to move in a different neighborhood. And we also live in a diverse neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that's the part that some people feel that also they move from their neighborhood, think it's going to be better. No, it's not like that. Totally different story.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's, for people who are listening to outside of this area, a lot of folks probably couldn't even, Joliet is a very diverse community, unlike many around the country, especially, you know, in Chicago. Like Chicago's diverse, but it's segregated.
Right.
Out here, I mean, I live in a neighborhood where it's like a bunch of black folks, bunch of white folks, bunch of
Hispanic,
like Asian. It's everything.
Different religion,
right. And which I think is crazier when you think about how you all are then being forced to go to a school that doesn't reflect that type of diversity at all. And even another thing we have to say too, because even if your child, and I'm speaking in general when I say this, but even when somebody's child goes to a diverse school, we aren't in the schools anymore, you know? And therefore, a variety of systemic reasons, we used to be the majority in some southern states. Brown versus Board of Education got rid of that. We know now 1% of all educators are black men. 1%, I think about 5 to 6 are black women. So they could be in a school that's, you know, 90% black. But they might not even have any black teachers.
Caucasian women.
That's where Minooka.
Yeah.
You know how many black teachers there have?
None.
None. No black
Not
teachers.
the intermediate school. There were none at Jones.
At Jones, not even Minooka. Not at all.
And I want to say this too, like, so was there any type of, is there anybody you can think of from the first time this incident happened to when you pulled them out? Any person that you felt like attempted to handle this the appropriate way?
Nope.
No.
Nope. Not at all. And the reason why we know they haven't tried to attempt to make it better or someone can be accountable for the situation. When my son go back to school next day, the same student there. The same one called him a nigger. They there the next day. And he got to look at this student again that just called him a derogatory name.
And so that's why we didn't, that was one of the reasons too. They didn't do anything to that student. And then that's what my son's like, he's gonna be there tomorrow. So then to make him look at this student, the same student that the assistant principal just made him high five, there was nothing done. So and it's a lot. And what I just wanted, because I've talked to other parents where it happened, but it's a lot of, it's consuming and it takes a lot of energy to deal with it, to go in, you're rearranging your schedule at work. You're going in to meet with them, to talk, meetings. It takes a lot. And I think that a lot of parents, it happens and they don't do anything because it's just exhausting after a while. And I know, like, even for me, like me and my husband, we were going, meeting, documenting, like, this can't be acceptable. And it was continuing to happen. And then at one point I got frustrated. And that's when I had reached out once we had pulled him out. I'm like, what do you do? And I know I recall reaching out to T, because I just like started Google. I'm like, who can help? I needed some guidance, and I reached out to her, and then I was able to put me in contact with various ones that, with you, with various ones that could at least give some guidance on what. But it's frustrating, it's time consuming, and then it's very disappointing as well.
I think it's designed for us to give up. We always been strong.
We just supposed to take it and not say anything.
Exactly. We strong parents, and we're not gonna give up on this. So we're gonna fight it to the end.
Yeah.
And I told the principal, and I told the principal, we're gonna do something about it. It's not gonna be a threat. It's a promise. Because we tired of got to go through the same thing over and over again every day. I'm coming home from work. I get a phone call from the school. I'm tired of that. No more talking. No more meetings. We putting our foot down on this situation. That's it.
You all serve as a profound example of what parents can do, and I hope that everybody that's listening to this who has had a child that's dealt with something like that, or even if you haven't, because unfortunately, whether it be in school, whether your child is on an AAU traveling team, I mean, we live in a country, no matter how segregated some parts are, it's diverse.
Absolutely.
And you're going to come in contact with somebody that's different from you at some point in time. It's important to advocate because, to your point, we have been dealing with this. We talk about 50, 60 years ago, school desegregation. You couldn't fight that.
Right. No,
our kids were like the diversity, the integration. You were expected to deal with that N-word, that spit, the rocks, and all those types of things. So we have to understand that we have dignity. We demand better, and like you said, it's a promise. So, and I do want to make sure people understand too, when you're looking to fight for justice, let's say outside of you going through the mindfulness and the counseling and things like that. If you feel like there's no way to resolve that thing in the school, because that's the first thing, right? You contacting the teacher, right? The teacher don't solve it. Okay, I'm gonna go to the principal, right? The principal's not solving. Okay, now we're going to the school board, right? And I know, like, y'all have tried all of that. The superintendent.
We dealt with her for Jones as
all
well
avenue.
as
So there are levels to this. And if you go through the teacher, the principal, superintendent, and the school board, those are 4 levels of bureaucracy in the school, and you still don't get what you deserve, you got to take it to the next level.
Absolutely.
And we do understand that it is, very time consuming. We live in a system where, look, if I'm not working, I can't even provide for my family. So I got to be able to feed, pay this rent and this mortgage first. Then I want to deal with that. But if you getting off at 5, driving in this traffic, getting home late, you want me to still fight this? So hopefully this kind of gives you all some example of how you can navigate through this. Also too, feel free to hit me up, hit us up for just for ideas of and networks of attorneys you can go to, because there are people out there that want to help, and things aren't going to get better on this level until there's some type of statement made. Because if you don't get it from a conscious perspective as I'm a human, you a human, then we're going to have to keep going until you understand, right? So with that said, y'all, moving forward, what does justice look like for you and your son? whether you consider litigation or whether you consider what he's doing now, what does that look like for your son and maybe even other children as well?
At this point, just considering everything that has transpired over the last 3.5 years, at this point, I think we're in agreement litigation at this point.
Yes.
And seek an attorney to take that on.
Yes.
And not only just for him, fighting for him, but also, as I stated, other children. I'm not just concerned about my own son, but other children, boys and girls that are brown and black that come after him within that school district. In any other school district.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep.
Yes, indeed. Completely.
Protecting them, right.
Do you want to add anything else, Mr. Sims?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with my wife that's what we litigation, make sure everything's be some changes.
Needs to be
Be some changes in the school system, the school district. And hopefully be some changes that more black teachers that qualified that can go to the next step and to teach our kids, maybe African class, history class, or also in social studies, science, math. We got black teachers out here qualified for these positions, and they need to hire more black teachers in the systems.
Indeed,
Yes.
indeed. So I close this off the same way I started it, y'all. Ignorance leads to fear. Fear leads to hatred. And hatred leads to violence. This is the equation. Until we begin to consciously educate our babies, y'all, moving forward, and stop handing them this toxic inheritance, we will continue to have the same problems, y'all. But it's through examples like the Sims family where we find ways to nip it in the bud, fight it, and agitate against it. Thank y'all for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
Thank y'all for listening to Crims Class.
Dibba dibba dee dee da.